With Resident Evil easily establishing itself as the king of remaking their original games, is it finally time for somebody to take that throne? What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Game Chamber and my review of the Dead Space 2023 remake.
Upgrade, motherfucker. Yeah. Deathstroke has arrived, bitch.
If you have not already subscribed to this channel, I typically play all of my new games in live playthroughs. I went through the entire game storyline live, about 4 different live streams, and then I do a review and eventually a ranking. So if you enjoy everything I'm talking about here today, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can join me on my next adventure, which started last night in the wizarding world of Hogwarts Legacy. Now, as far as Dead Space, this is a franchise that honestly I have always been baffled at why it went away. Now, I know Dead Space 3 was not a fan favorite, to put it lightly. I actually think the game's underrated, but nonetheless, it didn't sell near as well as the first 2 games, and it certainly was the lowest reception as far as critics and as far as fans of the trilogy. But the first Dead Space and the second Dead Space are such beloved survival horror classics within the gaming industry that it always baffled me that one, call it mediocre, wasn't a complete disaster, one mediocre game killed the entire franchise for over a decade. So I was extremely excited when they announced that a Dead Space remake was going to be coming, because actually I don't have the most experience with the first Dead Space. I did not jump into this franchise until Dead Space 2. I did eventually go back and play the first Dead Space, fantastic game, still holds up very well. But I don't have that deep-seated love of somebody that played it on day one or when it was released and have loved it ever since. And even I was still really excited, because this is a franchise that I think still has a solid place within the survival horror genre and could easily improve itself to a modern gaming mechanic. So does the Dead Space remake deliver everything that we missed from that original game while bringing some improvements to shepherd it into a new generation, hopefully a new era of Dead Space games? Is this the level of quality that we have come to expect from Capcom with their Resident Evil remakes? Let's get into it. And luckily, I can tell you that this is not only one of the greatest video game remakes that have come out thus far, it has cemented itself as one of the best survival horror video games ever created. And what this remake does so masterfully is that it completely recreates everything that you love and miss about your experience playing that original game, while also making nothing but improvements on that original game. You still have the awesome and terrifying atmosphere of the Ishimura. You still have the awesome creature designs of all of the various necromorphs. You still have that really unique survival horror shooting mechanic here where you're supposed to take out their limbs and not go for headshots, and you can stomp the living shit out of them if you want to save your ammo. Fantastic sci-fi horror story, some really good character moments here, even more character moments in this one. Everything that you wanted to re-experience about that original game was meticulously recreated here. And as far as the bevy of improvements that they have made, that's essentially the rest of this entire positive segment, because there are so many. First of all, the one that I appreciate the most is that Isaac is actually a talking character this time around. I personally do not like when my protagonists are silent. Sometimes it's pulled off better than others, like first-person shooters once in a while, it makes a little bit more sense. If you are a third-person character and you're constantly interacting with people, it drives me nuts. It distracts me, the fact that your character never says anything to anybody. And that's the one thing that drove me the most nuts about the original Dead Space game that they quickly fixed in Dead Space 2 and 3. And so I'm glad that they decided to implement that here. The motion capture and the voice artist that did Isaac in Dead Space 2 and 3 comes back to do this new version of Isaac, so you get a lot more character depth with him. You get a lot more character interactions with everybody that you have boarded the Ishimura with, and as far as characters like Nicole, that is a very significant drive for Isaac being in this, you get much more depth to their relationship, to her character. You get to know and feel these people a little bit more because you're able to interact with them through the character of Isaac, where in the original game, it was pulled off well enough, but that was a handicap for me.
It's the same. That marker. That's the symbol of the Church of Unitology.
Didn't take you for a believer, Isaac.
My mother was.
And there's even side characters that you get to interact with here that were just audio logs in the previous game. You actually get some screen time with. There's actually like a segment or a chapter or two that you get to interact and work with that character. Some of them actually come back later on in the game and have significant roles. And so I love the way that they took that original story, took those original dialogue scenes, took those audio logs, and just expanded on all of it to make it a much deeper and richer story. The next biggest thing that I appreciated so much that they did here was go for that God of War style one-shot take, that cinematic feel to where there is no loading screens, there are no chapters to where it's actually broken up into segmented levels like the original game, where you get off the tram, you experience this one little chunk of the ship, you do your objective, you get back on the tram, it takes you to another spot, giving you the illusion that you're kind of exploring the whole ship, but it's actually just linear parts. This one, as soon as you get access to the trams, you can unlock various sections of this ship, and once you've unlocked the whole thing, you can go explore the whole ship at any time. You could stop the main story, go explore, you can do side missions, you can go collect some of the collectibles and start hunting some trophies, you can go try to find ammo or nodes to try to build up your inventory a little bit, and I love the freedom of being able to do that. Not only does it make the ship Ishimura feel like more of a big living thing and just kind of adds to that whole scope of what this ship actually is, but it makes the game feel a lot less linear. And that is the aspect when I went back to play the original Dead Space that I felt like aged the worst, is segmenting the chapters into various sections of the ship. And you always knew that you were just kind of stuck in that one segment. I cannot go to the bridge and then go back to mining if I want to. I have to do mining, and then hopefully I'll get back to the bridge at some point later on in the story. A lot of the weapons were improved here too. I am somebody that when I played the original games, I kind of had my set 3 or 4 weapons that I really liked using, and I pretty much never deviated from that because the other ones I never really thought were all that interesting or thought had the gameplay mechanic that I wanted to use. And every single one of the weapons has a specific use, a specific advantage, or something that you can use on specific necromorphs that are more advantageous to you this time around. And as you improve these guns, you can unlock special abilities. There's also a secondary fire that's changed on a couple of these weapons. And so my go-to weapons weren't the same in this playthrough of 2023 as it was going through the first 2 Dead Space back in the original games. So I like the fact that some of those weapons that are pretty clearly not the fan favorites, they went and kind of revamped. And even just graphically, how these weapons are used, I think was awesome. Like the one that I loved using was the Force gun, which I never liked in the previous games. And here, with this new next generation engine that they're using, you shoot one of these necromorphs with the Force gun and it blasts off their dying flesh. And so you'll go from like full-on flesh monster, that sounded sexual.
Nice big cock.
Full-on covered necromorph, blast him, now you see muscular tissue. You blast him again, now it's just like a skeleton and a brain. And I just thought that was so fucking gnarly and cool, to the point where I was trying to find ammo for that just because I wanted to see what all these various necromorphs looked from different layers. Another massive improvement for me was implementing the 0G segments from Dead Space 2 into this game. In the original, whenever you went into these segments where there was no gravity, you just kind of had to look and you would just do straight jumps to certain areas. And it worked fine, but it was always kind of a wonky thing whenever you have experienced Dead Space 2 and you're like, man, this is so much better. And so I'm glad that in this one, every time you get into a section where there's no gravity, you can just run around and blast around on your little rocket boots. Makes that segment so much more fun, so much more explorable. You can hide collectibles there. Makes the combat that you're inevitably going to have in some of these a lot more entertaining and not as annoying. And just a better mechanic overall. And finally, I'll end on this positive note. One of the things that I appreciate the most as a fan of this franchise and as a fan of the fact that they have come back to it after so long is that this game really does give everybody that missed the original Dead Space games the experience that everybody else has been raving about for 10 plus years, while also completely priming this franchise for a hopefully awesome future. I don't know if they're going to directly recreate Dead Space 2 and 3 now, or if they're just going to take this as a jumping point for brand new stories and games. Either path I'm cool with. I'm just glad that I can play this game and confidently say that Dead Space is back. Now overall, I think this is a damn near masterpiece of a game. It's one of the best survival horror experiences that I've ever had, but there are a couple of things that are generally small issues to nitpicks that I did have with my experience. A couple of elements that I mixed on. The main one is the storyline regarding the character of Nicole. Now, spoiler alert, if you have not experienced this game, please just skip to the next segment, but if you are a Dead Space veteran, or if you have heard about this twist that is over a decade old, then you're fine. But the whole twist that Nicole has actually been dead the entire time, and you've been talking to a figment of your imagination that's been created by your interaction with the red marker, I don't know if it was handled as well here. I think the character of Nicole was handled as well here, but I felt like it was obvious from the get-go, the way that her character interacted with you, the cadence of her voice, the lack of love there, that it seemed like there was something trippy and off about her character. And the reason it's in the mix is because I don't have enough memory and experience with that original game to be able to tell you definitively if I would have said the same thing with that original game when I played it. I played the game after knowing that twist. But as I was playing this, I was hoping there was going to be a little bit more of a human element to her. There's a bit more of a relationship dynamic, a love there to deepen those two characters and enhance that tragedy by the last chapter of the game. And I just felt it was fairly on the nose that there's something off with this chick. The other thing that I was mixed on is that you have a constant enemy respawn in this game. Now, there are benefits and there are cons to that. Now, on one side, it always keeps you on your toes. It always keeps you on the certain level of intensity. You never know when you walk into a room whether or not something's going to jump out or not. And for a horror experience, that is very important, and it's a very good mechanic that they have implemented in this game with that intensity director that they've been talking about. However, as somebody that likes to backtrack and go do side missions and get collectibles, I did start to get a little bit frustrated in rooms that I know I have cleared out a dozen damn times, and I still have to interact and kill enemies or strategically run past them every time I run through certain rooms. For a game that does limit your ammo, not nearly as bad as some other survival games, but for a game where your ammo is limited, that is frustrating because you're like, motherfucker, I've already killed everything in this entire segment like 6 times. So you'll just have to know who you are in that scenario. Are you somebody that always wants to be surprised and always feel like there's this looming threat, which I think most of us, and a larger part of me, leans to that side? Or are you somebody that likes the ability to clear out a room and say, okay, whew, this is now a sanctuary if I need it to be? And now moving on to the negatives with the game. One of the bigger ones is just something that is just an inherent flaw with the game itself. I don't think the final chapter of Dead Space is a very good chapter. I certainly don't think it's a good chapter to end on. Just sitting and transferring this red marker through these hallways while you take out a few enemies, and then the final boss fight. I've never been that enamored with the last chapter of this game. Now, I would not have wanted them to drastically change that because I love the fact that they have faithfully recreated the original game and have only improved and expanded on things. But I'd be lying if I told you that the last chapter of the game is not probably my least favorite chapter of Dead Space. A tiny element that kind of annoyed me a little bit is that the fact that you have this open world now, you have this open ship that you can explore and backtrack at your leisure, it frustrated me that I couldn't drop a pin on the map. Like, there's an unbelievable UI in this game, which I didn't even get into. A lot of the things that you just love about the original Dead Space, it's not even really worth mentioning because we've said it ad nauseum. The user interface in this game is gorgeous, it's simplistic, it's so minimalist that it's awesome. And I love the mapping system. I love the directory system where you just click on the stick and it shoots a little graphic, that a little line that you have to follow. It's so simple and so effective. But I really wish that if I was looking for a certain room, or if I'm trying to get back to an area that I haven't unlocked yet that's not a part of the main quest, I wish I could cycle through the map and just drop a pin in that room and change where that little directory system takes me. When I was backtracking and trying to get all the collectibles, I had to constantly keep opening up the map because it wanted me to go this way, but I'm trying to go this way. And so I have to open it and just look at my arrow, or I have to run through and kind of remember where I'm at. And so just a simple little mechanic like that felt like a giant omission in this game. And my final negative is, again, something small, and I do suspect that this is a glitch that they will fix at some point in the near future, but it could also have been a choice, and a choice that I'm not a fan of, and it will be much harder of a negative if I find out that it was a choice. So in New Game Plus, a new collectible and something that's tied to a trophy that comes up is these marker fragments. And so when you go through the game the second time, in various rooms, I think there's like 12 or 13 of them throughout the entirety of the story, you can find this additional collectible called the marker fragments, and you have to collect all of them to get the alternate ending as well as get the trophy for that. Well, there is this issue where if you do not get them in order, apparently they just fucking disappear. At least the first one. The first marker seems to be the one that everybody's having trouble with, and there's a lot of people online bitching about it. I'm not the only one. Where if you happen to miss that first one, and you keep going thinking, oh, it's okay, I can backtrack whenever I want. That's the reason why they opened up this ship, right? I can go get all the markers before the end of the game. I'm fine. Well, no, you fucked yourself, because I was 4 hours into this game and then found out that if I did not get that first marker in Chapter 1, you don't get to get it. And so I had to restart my New Game Plus in order to get that trophy. So again, that seems like a really stupid design choice, so I suspect with everything masterfully done about this game that that's probably just a glitch that they're hopefully learning about and trying to figure out as we speak. But it is something that pissed me off. It is something that kind of, that one of the last experiences I've had with this game is trying to go through New Game Plus, and I'm like, fuck, I just wasted 4 hours. But overall, guys, if you are a Dead Space fan, I would be hard-pressed to find somebody that does not love what they did with this game. If you have never experienced Dead Space, there is no better time than now to jump on it and experience what we have been raving about for the past decade plus. I'm so excited that this franchise is back, and I'm so excited for the potential future of where it is going to go. So if you are a survival horror fan, this is a must-own game, and is clearly going to be a contender for best of 2023. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed this, please click over here for my playlist of all of my Dead Space live playthroughs, and in the future, within a couple of days, you will have a link up here that will be my Dead Space ranking. As of now, it'll be some other video. But please like and share and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss all of those videos in the future, as well as my playthrough Hogwarts Legacy. And as always, remember, the Game Chamber is Commander Shepard's favorite channel on the YouTubes.